Hello, biologists. It's Catherine, and we're going to talk about population change and population dynamics. We have Max here saying hello today. Um, so when we think about population size, we're going to track the change in population size, which we denote with the triangle delta, as the number of births. So that's how many people you're adding to your population, minus your number of deaths, how many people are leaving your population. You also need to take into effect gene flow. So gene flow is the number of immigrants that join your population minus the number of immigrants that leave your population. So your overall population size is add-ons from births and immigration minus your deaths and immigration. We can track these population changes over time using a little bit of statistics. So our growth rate is going to be denoted with little r, so that's growth rate. That's the change in our population size over time. We have little r, which is characterized by births minus deaths. Births are going to be little b, deaths are going to be little d, and your original population size is going to get the variable capital N. So our population growth overall is R times capital N. We have a graph here. We can see the population size and the number of generations. And then this graph gives us a couple different examples of organisms that have variable R values. So an E. coli has 59. That's huge. That's a massive R. You have a ciliate that has 1.6. That's still pretty high. Then you have a beetle, zero point 0.1. A domestic cow is 0.001. And then a beech tree is 0.000075. What does that mean? That means that the population size is changing very slowly. If we had a R of zero point 0.5, we would see a population size grow like this. So it increases more rapidly over the number of generations. A population growth rate of zero point 0.3 will follow a similar pattern, but it takes longer to start increase. And then here, this is your beetle, you have a slow increase over the number of generations as your population size changes. Now, exponential growth is seen when we have a population that doubles itself exponentially. So that's one organism turning into two, turning into four, turning into 16, and whatever 16 times 16 is your next generation. Our population size with exponential growth is classified by this J-shaped curve. So it's a very distinctive, quick upward growth pattern here. Most bacteria are going to do this because they can just duplicate themselves like crazy. Now, speaking of bacteria, under ideal conditions and unlimited resources, E. coli can do exponential growth by creating a new generation every 20 minutes. That means at 0.1, when you have a single cell, 20 minutes later, you'll have two, 40 minutes later, you'll have four, 60 minutes later, you'll have eight. And then within 36 hours, there will be enough cells to cover the entire planet in 1 foot layer deep of E. coli. In 39 hours, that is enough cells to cover the entire planet 8 feet deep. So this is how rapidly exponential growth changes. It's hard to mentally think about, but we're increasing exponentially. So an incredible process. Luckily, this doesn't actually happen in real life. In real life, we do have deaths. So here we see that drastic J-shaped curve of a bacteria with no deaths. If there's 10% die-off, then we see this blue line here. If there's 20% die-off, we see this green line here. But note that each is still following that J-shaped pattern. So we're still seeing exponential growth, but the time it takes to increase your size so that we start seeing that uptick in the J-shaped curve increases as the death rate increases. I've got a quote here from Charles Darwin for you to check out. So we've known about this exponential growth for hundreds of years. We're going to see populations that exhibit exponential growth and then die back notably. We call those boom and bust cycles. So you undergo rapid expansion in population size and then massive die off. These are usually short lived. Sometimes they're predictable by the environment, and sometimes they're predictable based on time. Here's two examples. Algae have a seasonal boom and bust cycle. So in July, we see the start of this exponential curve. Our population increases rapidly, and then we have mass die off. That's when the growing season is really best for algae. So huge growth spike and then die off. Lemmings, which are a type of rodent, they have a 4-year boom and bust cycle. So roughly every 4 years, there's this massive increase in lemming population, and then they die back the next year. We can also see really interesting cyclical patterns in population size change with predator and prey interactions. So here I have a hare, which is like a rabbit, that's the blue line, and a lynx, which is a wild cat, that is the red line. You can see that when the population of the hare increases, we get a lot more food source for the predator, and so the population of the lynx increases. There tends to be a little bit of a delay, right? Food first, then predator. But when your predator gets really high, you start to kill off your food source. And then if you lose your food source, you lose the number of predators. And so you have this interesting boom and bust cycle that is now not one population dependent, but is actually a community interaction because these are different species affecting each other's population rates. When we think about population growth, we have to think about environmental resistance. So these are the limits that put a cap on the number of organisms that an environment can sustain. We call that cap carrying capacity, and we give it the variable K, capital K. So the carrying capacity is the limit. Maybe it's based on food, maybe it's based on space, maybe it's based on resources like suitable habitat. All of those things that an environment puts up against the organisms that live in it. So you can't have unlimited food, you can't have unlimited space to create dens, and that means that you can't have an unlimited number of individuals growing in an area. If an organism grows up until its carrying capacity, it's going to be represented by an S-shaped curve, and we describe this as logistic growth. So logistic is our key word right here. Logistic growth starts out slow, then your population gets to a big enough size that it can rapidly increase. And as it increases, note that we don't get our J shape. If it was J shaped, it would go straight up. We're going to have our growth rate slow as we approach K. K here is your carrying capacity. You cannot support more individuals than this number of individuals at K. And so your population size stabilizes, and you have a static amount of growth that can occur. This is logistic. Now, what keeps organisms at K? There's a couple things. We have density independent factors and we have density dependent factors. Density independent means it doesn't matter how many organisms are in your population. What matters is the environment around it. Is there a flood? Is there a freeze? Is there a fire? Is there a volcano? Those are the kind of things that will decrease your population size and growth rate, but it's not dependent on how many individuals there are. Density dependent, these factors that decrease the population size, they are dependent on the number of individuals. For example, predator and prey interactions like that hare and lynx graph that we just looked at, those types of interactions will be limited based on the number of individuals. Additionally, disease, parasites, host interactions, competition, all of those are density dependent factors. Now, what happens if you have exponential growth and you exceed K? Because we cannot exceed K indefinitely. Like there has to be a limit to the number of individuals that can exist in a population. There are three options of what really happens. First, we have K right here. We'll look at the original K first. In that original K, here, we have a straight line. our population is going to grow. Maybe we overshoot K, and option number one, our population crashes and dies out, and we have an extinction event. We did not heed K in our environment, and thus our population is no more. Option number two, we don't exceed K indefinitely. This is the green line. We go above K, but then we fluctuate and we decrease K, and our population sits kind of around K. So it's almost like an S-shaped curve, but we've crossed the line. So this is going to be when you damage the habitat, maybe just a little bit, but you don't have any massive response from exceeding your carrying capacity. That's kind of the best outcome. The third option is as you're growing and you go past K, you create environmental damage. Maybe you eat too much of your food source, and so you kill off your food source, whatever it was, or you've degraded the habitat by creating nests in every single tree, and so now there's no longer nest space. Whatever it is, the habitat is hurt. And so now your K is no longer what it used to be because the habitat has been damaged. And so you have a reduced K. And so when your population crashes back down, instead of going extinct, you're going to stabilize around the new reduced K. We've actually seen this happen before. So here's an example of exceeding the carrying capacity. We have deer abundance on the y-axis, we have time on the x-axis, and we have our blue line that's showing carrying capacity. Now, deer population spiked, it exceeded the carrying capacity. We had a drastic dieback, but because deer can do environmental damage, they also decrease the carrying capacity of their habitat with their excess of population. So after the dieback, your population can stabilize closer to K, but now K has been decreased and you can no longer sustain as many individuals as you could before. I hope that was interesting, and email me anytime with questions. Bye.